Jason Moore, ladies and gentlemen, from the Fantasy Footballers. Jason, we're live.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.
Top 5 running back.
You're watching the Fantasy Football Show.
Smitty.
Take a lap.
What's up?
What's up, man? Nice to finally get you on the show. I've had your counterparts on. They did a fantastic job. People loved them. And very, very glad to have you on the show right now. And I've got a room full of people that are excited to see you. So welcome.
Yeah, happy to be here. Glad you saved the best for last, but
Yes,
understandable.
Sir. Yes, sir. We are pretty close by each other. I believe if you yell outside right now, I might actually even be able to hear you.
Yeah, you're in the valley, right?
I am.
That's well, congratulations to both of us.
Yeah, we explain.
Fantasy sports finally being legalized here. Ridiculous.
Explain.
So, like a lot of states, Arizona is one where you can't play DFS, and that's been a long-standing battle. Stacey Stern, who's one of the leaders of the FSGA. She's local from here, and she's been spending years and years and years trying to get legislation passed. We, the ballers, have gone down to the local Senate here and been participants in years past to try to get legislation passed. But it finally happened. It was signed today by the governor. So not just legal fantasy sports betting, but full sports betting. Sports books will be open and legal in Arizona. I genuinely did not think that would. I mean, eventually, 5 years down the road, but I did not think we'd be here this quick, and that'll be in place for 2021 NFL.
Oh my God, yeah, I've reached out to a couple of the daily fantasy sports sites, and the typical, I think, time frame to get it launched and working on their systems is about a 1 to 3 month time frame. So just to let people know, if you are in Arizona, and you're wondering when can you actually participate. But man, we've been at a disadvantage because it's hard to crank out content the same way on a DFS level, to the likes that we like to crank it out with the efficiency and accuracy when you literally have these limitations that are sitting in front of you. So it's going to open the door to the ballers, to my show. Opportunities are going to be through the roof, and I'm so excited, man, to be able to not just go like fly a drone over with my cell phone over the border of a state and make a bet and fly it back. Like I can actually place a DFS bet and cash it out in my own name.
Yeah, that is the thing I'm excited about. We talk hypothetically. We give the advice on certain things. Now it's like I want to do this. We've in years past with Underdog or previously Draft. I've played a million best balls, but I can only play in the ones that when I'm traveling. I entered the league even if I don't start it for a while when I was in New York or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, goodness, the amount of best ball leagues I'm going to play is probably too many. I mean, I'm going to have to create some spreadsheets to track that stuff.
I'm thrilled. The best ball drafts, I'm going to get in those like crazy. I'm going to do a ton of mock drafts on those, or not mock drafts, best ball drafts, like all off season long. So as soon as this opens up, man, I'm going to be live all the time doing these. So yeah, congratulations to us, Arizona. It's long overdue. How many states are left not being able to bet on daily fantasy?
I don't know the exact number for daily fantasy. I know for the sports gaming, since that was ratified in the Constitution, 26. We are now the 26th state, but including Puerto Rico, that has now passed legislation.
That's awesome, man. I'm so pumped. So we have about 55 minutes left in the show. You can jump whenever you need to. You can stay as long as you want to. But one thing I was going to touch on right out of the gate was some of the rookie rankings, running backs, wide receivers. Who is it possible in your mind that the Arizona Cardinals, we're both in Arizona, still might potentially throw a curveball and draft Najee Harris? He was someone I was pegging to get taken by the Cardinals. Not not like 50% odds, but like, 30, 40% chance that they want to give Kyler Murray a little bit more room to squeeze outside the pocket and throw on the run to Hopkins without having, defenses completely keying on him. And I think Harris would be a wonderful addition for this offense. But do you think that signing a James Conner, number one, completely eliminates that? Or do you think if he's on the board, they still would take it and they're paying Conner, only 1.4 or whatever? And what's your take on the backfield in general?
Yeah, I don't think that signing James Conner completely rules out the Arizona Cardinals from being able to draft a running back, but it probably is the tiebreaker that will put us elsewhere. Like if Najee were to fall to us in the second round,
yeah,
I could see them saying, well, we did not expect this to happen. We can use our second rounder, but I don't anticipate that happening. And if, we're staring down Javonte in the second,
like that
versus, a cornerback that we need, if we didn't do that in the first round, I would expect us to rely on James Conner. As far as the outlook of the Cardinals backfield, a lot of people have been like super Chase Edmonds this whole offseason. He's going to be the guy. I've never, we're both in Arizona. I've never thought that he was going to be utilized in that fashion at all. So I've never viewed him as this huge top end talent for drafts. However, the signing of James Conner is about as good as it gets for him, because if someone were to come in and now has, you can't be much better than a super affordable running back who played poorly last year and is plagued with injuries. So I do think, Chase Edmonds' ADP will drop, and he could be a real value in drafts now because of James Conner.
Yeah, I think they do ultimately go running back at some point, whether it's, Hubbard falls to him at a crazy value or like they go another direction. But I think there'll be a rookie in there at some point. But I agree with you. The odds go down tremendously that they would take Harris, and people were really against it anyway before that, saying that's not going to happen. But I just felt like if I'm in control of this offense and I'm trying to get Kyler Murray to that next level, I feel like that would be the difference maker for him. And defense is already much improved. Obviously we need a corner. I think Farley or Surtain, if they fell, would be good options for him in the first round anyway. But what's your take on Harris versus Etienne versus Harris, or are you a Javonte Williams believer? Because if he landed he's the guy I think out of all these players could go right to 1.1, even though he's like right now 1.5, 1.6, 1.7. Like it's crazy that landing spot could do that for him. But what's your take on these three?
Yeah, those are the big three for me as well as for everyone. I think where myself, I know my co-host Mike are completely in sync on this, but not everybody is. I've seen Najee talked about as the third best back by people that I really respect, which is insane to me. Najee is so far and away the best prospect to my eyeballs, to what I look for. The knocks on Najee to me are he's older, which is legitimate, right? You get a year less of value if you're in a dynasty league. A lot of times people knock the 4-year college athletes, which is more fair in, at the wide receiver position, and also less fair if you're at Alabama, because you got to wait. I mean, it's an NFL factory. So if you want your turn as a superstar college player, you're going to have to wait for that to happen. So I don't knock him really for either of those things. I think he's a complete back. He has everything I look for on film. And my favorite trait, when I'm looking at like not just a weapon out of the backfield, but like a true, I want this guy to be dominant in fantasy football at the running back position. What I really want to see in college is the inability of defenders to tackle them. If it's one-on-one, if it's a one-on-one situation, okay, how many of those come up in a college game where it's like, okay, he got in space and now it's one-on-one. Will he break this tackle or will the defender get him? I don't ever remember seeing a solo guy just, he beat Najee on that play. It's like it's a village at the end of every play taking down Najee Harris. I love that in college. I think that's going to translate.
What's a better landing spot for running back, Miami or Pittsburgh in your mind?
I think it's Miami. The Pittsburgh offensive line obviously had problems last year. It seems like a team more on the way down versus a team on the way up. Those are two of my favorite landing spots, though. I think both are great ones, primarily because what the coaching staff has shown us is that they want a guy. They want someone who's going to be a 3-down back. They want someone who's going to be on the field all the time, someone that's really going to control the offense from the running back position, and I love that. I mean, that James Robinson last year was unfathomably great for fantasy, and primarily it was just because he got everything. He was 90% of the running back touches and snaps, and if that's happening from any team, we saw that for years, obviously, with Lev Bell. In Pittsburgh and last year, it didn't matter who it was. If it was itty bitty Myles Gaskin, if that's the guy up, they're like, okay, you get all of the work. Oh, you're injured and we're going to Ahmed. Okay, you get all of the work. So if either of them spend high capital on a running back, they will be a 3-down workhorse.
What about the Jets? You like the Jets like third or fourth in line, or
probably fourth in line? The Cardinals, I would still say if they were to take someone, there's a lot of opportunity on a good offense. The Jets, a lot of opportunity, not a great offense yet. And obviously you're going to have a rookie quarterback there, so that's not going to be super helpful.
See, I love that because I feel like everyone thinks I'm biased because I'm in Arizona, but I really do see the value in taking a running back. But the odds again are probably a lot lower than I want them to be. Okay, so let's play a little game here. So if the Jets are your fourth favorite landing spot, let's say Najee lands with the Jets, but Etienne lands with the Dolphins. Who's your number one rookie running back?
Etienne lands with the Dolphins and Najee with the Jets. I don't want that to happen. I think I would foolishly put Etienne first. And I guess that means, well, so here's kind of the, we can relate it to what we saw last year where Jonathan Taylor was the guy that we really loved in the pre-draft process. I was one of the lower people on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I wasn't as enamored with the college film as most of the industry was, but when he went to Kansas City and was the only running back drafted in the first, it was an easy and obvious, okay, he's first. I'm going to take him over Jonathan Taylor for sure. And then, as the season played out, you're like, man, Jonathan Taylor's really good. We knew he was good. The difference, though, is the Colts were still a good team. And I'm not sure that the Jets are going to be a great team. So I would probably still have the same logic I used last year and put Etienne ahead in that situation.
I love Etienne. I think he's the best pass catching back in this draft. And, he needs to find a good place that will cater to that. And, there's some risk, I think, he feels like he has more upside in my opinion, but more risk. And I think Najee has that safe Marshawn Lynch type value, where he could be 6 to 12 overall in drafts for 4 years, 5 years, and that's good. That's really good. Whereas I think Etienne has the potential in the right spot to be a little bit better, maybe not even that much better, but a little bit better. But he could also be a complete bust if he lands in the wrong environment. But yeah, these running backs are definitely the weakest part of this very, very good draft class. From Trevor Lawrence, who I think could have a top five future at the quarterback position. How do you feel about Lawrence? Do you think he's got eventual Peyton Manning-like ability? I know a lot of people hate to throw names around like that before you've seen a player take a snap, but I feel like I like to do that. I like to try and be predictive with things, and I try not to be reckless with it. But with Lawrence, I feel that this guy is truly special, and he's going to be in that top 5 or 6 conversation very, very quickly.
Yeah, I mean that's the goal, right? Is to predict what's going to happen, and if you can predict a superstar before they're a superstar, great. Well, this one's easier to predict. I think a lot of people throw those names out. The best prospect since Andrew Luck. I don't think I've ever heard in this entire draft season that sentence not thrown out when talking about Trevor Lawrence, and it's true because it's very, very rare that the number one recruit out of high school is the number one recruit out of college. But when that happens, when the guy who was supposed to, I'm wearing a drafted to be great shirt. This guy was brought into college to be great and then was better than expectations, got better every single year, and now is the clear first pick in the draft. So I think he's going to be fantastic. A top 6 fantasy quarterback for 8, 9, 10 years. And so, that's exceptionally valuable for fantasy if you're in any kind of dynasty league.
Derrick Henry, do you have concerns about Derrick Henry coming off a 2,000-yard season, which typically of the other running backs that have ever accomplished that have literally seen their numbers get cut in half, or in some cases worse? Barry Sanders is the one that was closest to replicating coming off that 2,000-yard season. But when you have a guy like Henry, who was at 303 carries in 2019, completely used, overworked in 2020, about 400 total carries if you include the playoffs. A lot of things coming together to make him, in my opinion, a pretty big risk at his ADP, or the expectation level for him at least. Do you have concerns that this could be the year Henry falls off? Or if not, what running back do you have concerns about that others might not have that you feel kind of similar about?
We just did our this week on the Fantasy Footballers. We had our top 20 rank, our early pre-draft rankings of existing veteran running backs. I was the lowest on Derrick Henry, but I was still at 6. I don't expect him to fall off. I don't expect his workload to go away. I don't expect his legs to be tired from a busy season. Derrick Henry has always been the outlier, right? There's so many statistical reasons why Henry shouldn't work, but he was the number 3 running back last year, and he was the number 3 running back the year prior. But again, I said I was lowest on him because there are concerns. Primarily, I always want a running back that can catch the ball because you can't be game scripted out. And secondarily, it's not just Derrick Henry and worries of like, okay, because he's had such a workload, his legs are going to collapse or he's going to get a season-ending injury. Those things can happen to literally anyone. It's almost irrelevant. Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, the 1 and 2 last year, injured. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're a running back, you can get injured. So take that out. The offense is so shallow. If A.J. Brown gets injured, that's going to be bad news. You saw that even when they had Corey Davis last year. The first 3 weeks of the season, Derrick Henry wasn't this awesome guy when A.J. Brown wasn't there. He was the running back 14 week 1, wasn't in the top 24 running backs. I think he was running back 36 in week 2. So, there are concerns and you lost Arthur Smith. So there's concerns to me of the Tennessee Titans and the offense in general. But I'm not betting against Derrick Henry. It's just if I'm up at the top of a draft and I'm looking at other great options at running back, I will probably side with the other guys.
That's exactly how I feel. There's always what I call a line in the sand where a player goes from avoid, flips on over to a value grab. And I don't know where my line in the sand, to be honest, is with Henry. Probably a lot lower than I'm willing than he's ever going to fall to. So I feel like I'm most likely going to be a guy that doesn't own a single share of Derrick Henry in redraft. I own him in one dynasty league.
Let me ask you 2 names that came up on the show. I'm curious if you'd take Derrick Henry or these guys. Ezekiel Elliott.
Because he's in the same boat where it's like, I don't know how I feel about him, because anybody with his kind of mileage is not relevant anymore. Like, he has mileage that's crazy. And, a guy can look good. Like Derrick Henry's, it's so influential when you see chains hanging around his neck and he's doing push-ups and you're not thinking, he can't get hurt. But knees, they break down. Terrell Davis had talked about it before when he saw Todd Gurley running. He said, Todd Gurley's done. And it's because he knows. Terrell Davis said that there was a game he knew when his knees were just not going to cut it anymore. And it was in the middle of a game and he still was doing pretty well the rest of the game, but he knew it was his last real solid game. Like, your knees can only take so much. A running back's different than any other position. And at some point it happens quick. It happens so fast. And Zeke Elliott already looked inefficient at times. And you could play the whole, Tony Pollard comes in, change of pace, different defensive scheme, does well. Very explainable why a backup could look better than a starter at times. The offense fell apart. I think he's a value grab at 8, 9, 10 in maybe 1 or 2 leagues. But the fact that I'll tell you it'll only be 1 or 2 leagues, let's say if I'm doing 10 leagues, means that I'm concerned enough to not put all my eggs even close to in one basket with him.
A lot of people concerned with Zeke this year. I am
Cuffing
not
Pollard. And then
projecting that, but I get it. You don't want to be left holding the bag.
I think if you have Pollard, it's pretty safe, and I think it's crafty to have Pollard without Zeke too. But I think if you have Pollard, it's safe enough to deploy in a redraft. But in a dynasty, I don't want any part of what the cost of entry is. I'd rather go after wide receivers or something because
right.
And that's the thing.
Trade a Zeke for a Chris Godwin if you could find someone in your league willing to do that.
I don't know about Godwin because I feel like he's a lot like Odell. Like very talented, but will we ever?
You're ruining my piece over here. You're
yeah.
ruining it, Smitty. Back behind the production desk over here is Brooks, who's listening in.
Don't do it.
He has Zeke, and I have offered Chris Godwin for Zeke, and he should be taking this deal. And you were supposed to back me up on that and say, yes, Brooks, trade Zeke for Godwin.
Well, no, let me put it this way.
If you're not talking positive about Godwin, we're not talking about Godwin.
Let me put it this way. I feel they're very, very similar. Like there's a lot of risk for both of them, and I don't know that we'll ever see what we need to see out of Godwin to be that wide receiver one that we've been waiting for, like Odell. Odell is talented, but we'll never we don't know if we're ever going to see him produce. But I will say that if you need a wide receiver or you need a running back, that would be a darn even swap with the same kind of risk I think on both sides. And Godwin's younger, so if you're in a dynasty, it does make a little more sense. But Zeke Elliott, I'm okay with in redraft for one or two leagues out of 10, as long as I have Pollard. And I think Dak, I love Lamb. Lamb's in my top 5. I think Lamb's a top 5 wide receiver in 2020. You don't pay that. I'm not recommending anybody pay that, but I absolutely think he's going to explode. And Zeke might have one more year squeaked out of top 5 to 6 running back production. Maybe. Could be. Possibly. Who's the other name?
The other name was Aaron Jones. I don't know how you feel on Aaron Jones versus Derrick Henry. If you're in a redraft league, which way you'd go there?
Probably, in a redraft league, I feel I would definitely draft Henry higher if push came to shove, but it might be like uncomfortable for me to actually do it because in my gut, I will want to go Aaron Jones. So I think I would trade down and take Aaron Jones, but get value out of that. Aaron Jones was such an interesting offseason move because here he is. He's going to free agency, right? 1 foot out the door. Everybody thinking he's gone. A.J. Dillon's the man. Everybody overdrafting A.J. Dillon, not thinking that coming back was a good possibility. And had he gone somewhere else, I would have been all out. I would have been completely out because here's a guy that has trouble staying healthy. He is touchdown dependent in a perfect environment that gives him what he needs in order to stay healthy, and he's going elsewhere. And the best thing for Jones was to return. We know what we're getting with him. We know the production we're getting with him. And Aaron Jones is top 5 running back upside. But the problem with him is the injury risk. I had him on my bold predictions, Jason, the year he broke out, and it was because he came in with his nutrition on point. He was completely ripped. He took the offseason seriously. So depending on how he looks and if he's taking care of himself, I don't know if you have any insider information for me on it, but that will determine about how high I go on him because he's so injury prone. And I would have been out because he would have got more work somewhere else trying to make up for not getting that touchdown production. But Chase Edmonds smells a lot like that situation because, here's Chase Edmonds, everybody thinking he's starting, boom, he's not, or maybe he's seeing competition. So I saw a lot of similarities between Edmonds and Dillon. What's your take on those two?
On Edmonds and Dillon?
No, on Aaron Jones and Henry.
I really like both of them this season. I would have Henry ahead. I still think, when you go back-to-back top 3 and you're dominating, and you're always dominating at the end of the season as well when it matters. If we're talking about redraft leagues, I'm not out on Derrick Henry. I actually think this year, when I'm looking comparatively to the last couple seasons, I think there's a little bit more depth at running back than in previous years. I'm looking at 13, 14, 15. I think Chris Carson's my running back 15. I like him this year. So it's rare. In the past, I've been like, man, if you don't get one of these 4 or 6 guys, it's over at the position. I don't feel that this year.
Do you like wide receiver at all? I'm doing a lot of mocks where from the 12 spot, I end up with DK and Ridley or Jefferson and DK if it's dynasty. I like Jefferson that much. And redraft he falls a lot further, which is awesome. And if you want to tell me how you think, what you think about Jefferson while you're at it, that'll be great. But do you like wide receiver, and do you feel comfortable enough that you could land a Monty and a Clyde or a Clyde and, a couple players like Mike Davis? Do you think you could deliver the same kind of winning production from a wide receiver approach from the 12th spot in 2021? Because every year is different. Sometimes it's easier to do than others.
I don't. I'm still not. I mean, we've got a saying on our show, stay water. We don't ever want to just say, well, this is the strategy I'm using.
Yes.
Every draft's going to fall different. But in general, I don't like going wide receiver to start. Unless it's dynasty. If it's dynasty, I'm pretty much always going to go wide receiver to start. But in a redraft.
In dynasty, you will? You'll go wide receiver?
Yeah, dynasty, the lifespan of wide receivers is just so much better than a running back. And when you're in a startup draft, that's where all the good, young, but veteran has already proved it. Wide receivers are scooped up, and then you can grab as many as possible in your startup draft and figure out running back later. That's my mentality in a dynasty startup draft. But in a redraft, the value that wide receiver provides, when you look, it's about opportunity cost, right? Rounds 3 through 7, historically, and even ADP this year, generally speaking, there's just so many wide receivers that I think are awesome. And in those rounds, it's like running backs, it could be, they could work out, but they're not as sure. If I go wide receiver in the first 2 rounds, then I'm kind of forcing myself to look at running backs, unless I'm willing to adopt a 0 RB approach, which is fine. I don't enjoy that, so I don't ever do that. I can't stand starting a redraft league where I'm scrapping and clawing and hoping that at the end of the season it'll work out. Might be better this year with a 17-week season, but for the most part, I really like the value of wide receivers in rounds 3 through 7. And if I start wide receiver, I'm kind of screwing myself over for the players I prefer in those mid rounds.
I like the water example. I tell everybody, draft to your strengths. You can't use a blanket statement for somebody that is really good at drafting Kelsey in the first round or late or early second versus somebody that botches that every single year. Or if you're good at drafting Mahomes at 3.1 or 2.12 and other people land the next Josh Allen. Strategies depend on the skill set of the owner. And I think that, man, I either hate my wide receiver redraft team when I mock it, or I absolutely love it. It's very risky, but I feel like, if those running backs fall, especially like Najee Harris, which I don't know that you would be able to land him later, like in August, if he lands in a good spot, because right now he's just a name. He's not an actual, but in mock drafts, I've got Najee and Clyde or Najee and Monty. And Monty, I want to talk about next, because I saw a short clip that you guys posted on it too, because I've been talking about Monty for a while. So when I saw it, I stopped and made sure I watched the small clip there. I think it was on IG, but it's where Mike was shocked to hear that Monty was the number 4 running back in 2020 in most scoring formats, yet he's being completely discarded. But Nagy has been named the play caller in 2021, which is like the only thing I could think of that's as bad as if like Adam Gase was brought over to, directly monitor Monty's workload. What do you think of Monty in 2021 with that knowledge that Nagy will be calling plays? And do you think if he climbed into like the 3rd round, would you take him, or is he like a late 3rd, early 4th?
Yeah, he'd probably need to go a little later than the 3rd for me to really want to jump on the David Montgomery bandwagon. Nagy doesn't bother me that much. I'm not saying he's great, but he's had a Mitchell Trubisky problem. He's had a quarterback problem, and that's play callers always look so much better when their quarterback is good. Adam Gase was great when he had Peyton Manning. And so I think that's really the issue with the Bears. And obviously, at the end of the season last year, David Montgomery was unbelievably fantastic, and it was still Matt Nagy running the show as the main offensive guy there. My issue is last year what we saw was a real great, a perfect storm of losing Tyreek Cohen and having the easiest running back schedule through that stretch. You look, you had Cohen there the first 4 weeks of the season, and that's when you had David Montgomery as running back 37, running back 7, running back 39, running back 30 those weeks. Then when he was the guy, he was pretty much top 24 running back or top 12 running back almost every single week the rest of the way out. So I do think that, with a little bit more competition there, healthier bodies in the backfield, I don't think his workload will be as extreme as it was last year.
Yeah, Monty's tough. I think if I was in a wide receiver bind, I went wide receiver, and I needed a running back, he would be a good bet. But I certainly am concerned about the workload and the way he felt with Nagy just dragging him down. Such a high expectation we all had for him entering his rookie year. But yeah, we'll see what happens. It's good value. Do you like, and I mentioned him earlier, Justin Jefferson? I feel like out of all the wide receivers, my two favorite to be the most likely, and I'll ask you the same question. Give me one or two wide receivers that are the most likely that no one would expect to finish number one overall for all wide receivers. So it has to be kind of shocking. But, Jefferson's not all that shocking. I think Lamb probably is a lot more shocking. But those are my two. Who do you think could be number one that would shock people?
Number one overall. So you've got Jefferson and Lamb. To speak to those two guys, I love both players. I think they're great. I think they could potentially be the number one. I still believe that it will be, and I've actually shifted my thoughts since the end of the regular season last year, but I still think Amari Cooper will be the one as far as fantasy wide receiver from the Cowboys on that team. But if we're looking for players who could be the number one overall fantasy option without being drafted like that, some players that might come to mind would be DJ Moore, who I think is going to see, with Curtis Samuel gone, the offense presumably better, possible quarterback upgrade, might be neutral. And the fact that, the touchdowns weren't really there, he would be a name that I would throw out there. Outside of that, crazy, unrealistic, probably not going to happen, but a name that I think has the physical ability and could have the quarterback upgrade and maybe just lights the world on fire would be Terry McLaurin, because
I like that.
You need a little bit of magic. He's got the speed, he's got the physical traits, and now he's finally got a quarterback that can get him the ball. He's been a good fantasy option with trash at quarterback, and now you've got a guy who is going to throw a lot of passes far in the air, sometimes to the other team, but all that means is he's going to throw it more. So I like Terry McLaurin a lot this year.
I like those too. So you heard it, guys. Buy low on McLaurin, buy low on DJ Moore, Jefferson, Lamb. Obviously, been beating that drum for a while for all of you, but I like all those options as some very, very overperforming players given their ADPs. Any idea who could maybe do that at the running back position that's not expected to be top five that you could see being top five?
At the running back position,
we'll say it's top five, yeah.
That's not top five, who could be top five. Let me pull up my running back rankings, and I will tell you. And I won't just tell you who I think. I'll tell you who it will be.
Okay. Get your pens out, people.
Yeah. At running back, if I were to pick someone that's how far down do you want? Obviously,
why don't you pick a medium range that might not shock everybody, and then somebody a little bit deeper.
All right, we'll go medium range. I think Cam Akers could do it. You saw Todd Gurley year after year be the number one running back in that system. I think the system is better with Matthew Stafford, and he took over that role. He is exceptionally talented. If he gets that workload that we saw at the very end of the season and into the playoffs, he could be a guy with a ton of receptions, a ton of rushing touchdowns, and everything in between. So I think his ceiling is exceptionally high. And then as far as someone a little bit further down that could possibly finish that high. This is one where it's all going to be about the NFL draft. I know he's going to be drafted later because he was undrafted in the NFL. But James Robinson was already a top 10 running back. And if he escapes the NFL draft without another high capital running back being drafted, and that is a massive if. But if they are saying he is our guy going forward, I think that the offense is going to be certainly better than last year. More touchdown opportunities for him. And every time you watched, if you just, not a lot of people watched Jacksonville Jaguars games last year, but if you did get the opportunity to watch the film, it's just like he's another guy where every time he touched the ball, it was like a really positive play. Nobody could tackle him on first contact, and he can do it all. So he's not going to be a highly drafted guy because of his NFL draft capital and the presumption that the Jags are going to be bad. But he was the running back 7 last year. Coming into year 2, quarterback upgrade. So there's some things, so long as the backfield stays as it is, that could point him upwards.
I like that. And we talked about, that was funny because at the beginning of the show, it was a lot of Akers talk, a lot of James Robinson talk, like literally like an hour spent.
Of your show today?
Yeah, on this one. Yeah.
I was not watching, but
yeah.
Okay, I agree.
So, well, no. I disagree with you on Akers a little bit. I like his talent. I like his talent a lot. I just don't trust the Rams and the fact that I feel like, there's still a little bit of injury concern for me, especially his style plays very aggressive with his own neck and he can unlearn some of those things. But I worry a little bit about injury. I worry a lot about the Rams coaching staff, but I love the talent. I think if he got the volume and I trusted the volume to be there, which I feel like coming out of 2021 or 2020, there's a lot of momentum for that. So I do like him, but I feel like he's getting way overdrafted. So the whole conversation that I was having earlier was that I see him going at 9, 10, 11, like first player drafted value. And it depends on the mock draft you're doing, especially dynasties going that high. And to me, that's just way too high. But I love James Robinson, and I went on a big rant about how everyone's off their rocker talking about how he's an unrestricted free agent. Those guys never get second contracts. Priest Holmes, Arian Foster, there's always outliers. And there's psychology behind this in fantasy football where you have people that doubt a guy like James Robinson because they didn't find him. And they want so badly for him to fail so that they can be vindicated in their doubt that they initially had, or they're missing him. And James Robinson, off of his 14 games, was 1,000 yards, 10 total touchdowns. The dude looked really good. 4.5 yards per carry, I believe, was the stat average. So give him a quarterback, give him room to run. I absolutely think they're going to utilize him, and I agree with you. He is that top 5 running back potential. And in Dynasty, would you be shocked if I told you, maybe that his Dynasty ADP is like in the 3rd round?
No, that doesn't shock me at all. I mean, it's one of those things where, I just touted him, and I can see, a great future for James Robinson. If they genuinely, and I believe they should, if I were the general manager of the Jaguars, I'd be using all the capital you have in the NFL draft on every other piece. Your running back room is fine with Carlos Hyde and James Robinson. If they do that, I think that he's got a bright future, but the shades of Phillip Lindsay, right? Phillip Lindsay came in undrafted, rookie free agent, and was awesome. Was a running back 1 his rookie year, over 1,000 yards, and then it was like, but there wasn't a lot of investment in him. They didn't use him as much the following season. He was okay. Then they go out and sign Melvin Gordon. Now he's not on the team because there's no investment. And this isn't even the regime that really brought in James Robinson. It's not the same coaching staff that utilized him last year. So I get, in a dynasty startup, I'm probably avoiding James Robinson because those early picks are so important. I want assured wide receivers early in my dynasty startup. If I just light my 3rd round pick on fire and there's too large of a chance that happens, even if I don't think that should happen, then I would probably avoid James Robinson in the 3rd.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people share that opinion. I just think he's in a safe place there. I don't like him higher. I actually was shocked at my own rankings after I heard he was like, everyone kept debating it on a clubhouse room I was in, and I went and I'm like, okay, let me mock draft this, and I couldn't put him in the top 24, but I still love, like by default, love him in the third round. I think J.K. Dobbins is another good one that could potentially crack the top 5. I think Antonio Gibson would be another one if I had to throw out 2 more that you didn't cover. And make no mistake about it, I even said this at the beginning of the show, Akers is capable of it. There's no reason he can't. It just comes down to, do you trust the Rams? They didn't use him for a long time until the end of the year. So, my avoiding him in 2020 worked out for the most part, because by the time he got going, it was a little too late for a lot of people. But, he's a talented guy. And if he gets the volume, he certainly could be, 5 to 10 worthy for running backs. I don't disagree with that. Saquon Barkley. And do you got to go?
No,
Okay.
I'm good. We'll
okay.
finish this. We'll finish this out.
Okay, we got about 19 minutes here. So Saquon Barkley looking pretty good coming off the ACL injury so far. A lot of film out there of him doing these like amazing lunge jumps. And I have a little experience with knee injuries myself. Torn ACL, torn LCL, torn meniscus, torn MCL, tore my patellar tendon off my kneecap.
All at the same time?
No.
Oh, I was like, that was a brutal.
No, this is injury.
I mean,
Yeah,
a lot of these are at the same time for Saquon, right?
Well,
he had the ACL, the MCL, and the meniscus.
All of them were the same time, but the patellar tendon.
Okay.
So yeah, I tore all that, but I tore my patellar tendon off my kneecap. And so it was like floating in the lower part of my thigh, and I was like trying to push it back in place, like the 10-second rule. I wasn't sure if it was like the Mahomes, like out of pocket thing,
Mm-hmm.
but up here wasn't a good move.
I would have passed out.
So I have a lot. I'm versed into the injury stuff, but I can say with certainty that when you have a quad as strong as Saquon Barkley's, when you have surrounding knee muscles that a lot of other people don't have, your knee joint itself is tighter from the get-go. So that's one reason Adrian Peterson had such a good recovery, because he trusted his knee. There wasn't compensation involved, like with other players that might not have as strong of a leg to kick off that recovery. I firmly believe that Barkley's going to have that Adrian Peterson, like, I'm not saying he's going to rush for 2,000 yards, but I think he's going to look like he didn't miss a step or a beat at all coming into 2021. And it's so rare to do that. And look at like Dalvin Cook, you look at other running backs, they overcompensate. They oftentimes get hit with like a hammy injury during that season from the overcompensation. But Barkley was, he's been climbing from like 9, 8. He was kind of right around Zeke, where Zeke was a month ago, 2 months ago. But now he's climbing into the top 5 overall in redraft. Do you agree with that? What's your take on Barkley? Are you avoiding him? Break that down.
No, I've got him in my top 5 running backs, and that means he's probably my top 5 picks for redraft. There are definite concerns. The fact that it was the ACL, MCL, and meniscus meant that he didn't actually get surgery, because it was an early injury, which is great for a timeline usually, but he didn't get surgery until October. So that pushes his timeline back a little bit. So I believe it's possible that Saquon could get off to a slow start, slower than you want when you draft him top 5. But I definitely think he's going to be awesome this year. And I would be willing to take a slow start because, I think the Giants offense has the opportunity to be good. You get Saquon back, you add Kenny Golladay, and that should matter for your offense. And Daniel Jones, he's not my favorite, but a lot of the end of the season was not fair to him with the injuries he was dealing with. The fact that I remember one game watching it, and it was like, why are they allowing him to be in the game? Because he had already had that injury, and you watch Daniel Jones, he's an mobile, rushes for a surprising amount of yards, but more important than that, escapes the pressure and rolls out, part of the fumbling problem. But you watched him in this game. This is a quarterback that doesn't know how to play as a statue. He's not a pocket-only passer, and he couldn't move. He couldn't even move to the right or left a little bit. And I was watching this game this is on the Giants. This guy should not be in the game. So I think that he's been knocked a little bit too hard for what we saw at the end of the season. I like Saquon. I'm in, but he might be an even better trade for target if he gets off to a slow start at the beginning of next year.
Yeah, good point. Quarterbacks. Mahomes, I assume, is your number one.
I like him. I think he's going to be good this year.
I like him.
Yeah.
He's solid.
Solid
number
quarterback.
number two and number three in redraft, and number 2 and number 3 in dynasty for quarterbacks.
Number 2 and number 3 in both are going to be the same. It's going to be Kyler Murray and Josh Allen. I want the dual threat. I want the ability to throw the ball. They're both young enough where, for dynasty or for redraft, it's the same. I go back and forth all the time on Kyler versus Josh Allen. I think I've got Kyler ahead, and here's my rationale. Josh Allen was awesome. I mean, he played the perfect season for him. I don't see him going up a notch from what he did last year. Last year, to me, is if I'm drafting him, I hope he repeats. He looked awesome. I don't see why he shouldn't be just as good. But Kyler wasn't perfect. Kyler really looked, he didn't always look great. And I think that he has room to actually improve on last year. I don't think he's peaked yet. So I would take Mahomes, Kyler, then Josh Allen.
And to your point on the Kyler, needing to improve on a lot of different levels, is inefficient, made some bad decisions. That's more reason why I'm saying draft Najee Harris if he's there. Arizona Cardinals, please. I'd say Josh Allen's my number 2 across the board, dynasty redraft. But Herbert's my number 3, and I think especially
dynasty or redraft
in both. And I think if Herbert. Well, I don't know that. I mean, chat. Tell me in the chat if you guys think that's bull. But I think Kyler's
redraft,
right there. You what?
For redraft, I think it's a little hot take. I mean, I get it, right? He was unbelievably great, and taking a step forward, he should be even better. But his rushing that he started with in the beginning of the season completely went away, which is kind of what you expect for someone with his arm talent. But that hurts for fantasy. And then the defense, that was plagued by all the injuries last year, I think will be significantly better. I don't think he's going to have to be in a shootout every single game like he was last year. But I get it. I mean, I get taking the shot on Herbert. Does your mind awesome?
Does your mind change if somehow Javonte Smith falls to the Chargers to 13?
Yeah, I'm a big Javonte Smith fan.
Okay.
If he went to the Chargers, I'd be very sad. I would be very sad.
Why?
Because the Cardinals are 3 picks later.
Oh,
oh my God!
I got you.
I'm fine. Javonte Smith, I think should be drafted in the top 10. But if he gets that close to the 16, I'm going to be so upset.
Easily. But does that make Herbert your number 2 quarterback, especially in Dynasty, if he gets Devonta Smith? Or let's say Kyle Pitts. Let's say they move up. Because I think, and I know I'm so offensive-minded, and I admit I'm biased. I'm very, very, I always want offensive guys to be taken. But I strategically, I run out of offensive players from this rookie class. So I can't put offensive players in every team. But I target certain teams. I'm like, this is where Kyle Pitts would dominate. Kyle Pitts in a Chargers uniform or Devonta Smith would make Herbert a bona fide number 2 overall. You could make an argument for higher, but I'm just going to stop at 2 and say if Devonta Smith or Pitts are on roster, he is a bona fide number 2 dynasty quarterback. And I'll go as far as to say I agree with you. I love Smith. I don't know why people doubt him. I know that people worry about his 170-pound frame, but he's great at press coverage. I believe led the entire FBS in yardage, touchdowns, and receptions in press coverage. And he also, out of everybody in the FBS, I think had over 600 or more yards than every other receiver. The guy is just phenomenal, dominated everybody. And I don't understand how there's this doubt around him. But tell me your thoughts on Devonta Smith and then circle back to the Herbert thing.
Yeah, Devonta Smith is my clear-cut number 1 wide receiver in this draft. I totally actually do understand the fears people have. You look at the metrics, and to be 6'1", 170, there's virtually no example of success in the history. Marvin Harrison was near that, so maybe one. It's just not a body frame that has ever worked in the NFL. And so on that alone, and then you add in the usually 4-year prospects at wide receiver are not good bets to be great fantasy. Both of those things don't matter to me at all. Alabama, you're behind 3 other first-round NFL draft picks. Okay, he needed to wait till year 4. It's a unique situation. And when it comes to the body type, I cannot possibly look at film or look at analytics and say that this guy's not just a perfect wide receiver prospect. I'm not going to look at the scale. I'm not going to look at a scale on the ground versus film and stats and say, look, this guy's he's an outlier. So I absolutely love Devonta Smith. He is, I hope, and I think he's going to be great in the NFL. Let's say he goes to the Chargers, and whether that means Herbert is in that conversation for the number 2 in redraft, he wouldn't be for me. I wouldn't call it hot takey if someone put him there. I need a guy who's going to run. If you're not Patrick Mahomes, I need a guy that's going to run a ton to put you at number 2, and that's going to be Josh Allen and Kyler Murray. Well, Lamar Jackson.
I understand.
In fantasy, you gotta have the wheels.
And I understand. I mean, I have Kyler right there. I have Kyler at 3, 2, 2, 3. Even my rankings, right? They switch around. I'm like you. It depends on what I ate for breakfast. But honestly, I think this quarterback class is just so deep. Like even Burrow at 8, it doesn't deter me away from going quarterback early though. And I get coined a lot in the industry as being the early quarterback drafter when really I just support all avenues of quarterback consumption. So whether it's Mahomes at 3.1, I'm ecstatic about, or if I have to take Josh Allen at 4.01, I'd do it in a heartbeat. But I still cultivate those breakout quarterbacks so that I can make a trade and trade one of them off. Are you never drafting Mahomes at like 3.01? Are you set in like I can get running back and wide receiver value and I'll always stream my quarterback or find a good value quarterback because this class is this pool in 2021 so deep? Or are there times where you do take Mahomes because he is the best player on the board?
So in reality, when I'm doing real drafts, I can't remember other than one time last year, and we're obviously in a lot of leagues, that I pull the trigger on that early quarterback. If Mahomes fell to the middle of a third, I would definitely be willing, looking at the board, instead of taking a tier or 2 or 3 down on running back or wide receiver, I could see myself pulling the trigger on Mahomes. I'm not like anti that. I'm not going to shame that as a concept. But for the most part, if I'm not going to get Mahomes at the very get-go, I am looking more for the breakout or the guy that is disrespected, one of those two that's going to be rounds 8, 9, 10, 13, whatever, and stock up depth at the non-onesie positions where you need flex options, you need bye-week replacements, you need injury replacements, all the time. Quarterback's just so easy to get away with having one on your roster. I need depth at running back and wide receiver.
And one quarterback last year that I was so high on, and he was so disrespected. I don't know if you guys felt the same way there. But Aaron Rodgers, like 9th, 10th rounder, it was insane. He was 37 years old. You can obviously play well past 37 years of age, and he did not lose anything talent-wise. It was a complex situation where Davante Adams was hobbled. He was out for a big portion of the year. Even when he came back, he was lingering and hobbled. And they basically transformed, they makeshifted their offense into a run-heavy system that fed Aaron Jones, 19 TDs on the ground, whatever that number was. And so he was so doubted coming into 2020, and he was a value. He screamed value. And there's one quarterback that comes to mind this year that fits that mold. And by default, even if you tell people that you're going to take him, he doesn't go because there's so many other names that just by default go ahead of him. But it's Russell Wilson. He's falling to like 8, 9 out of all drafted quarterbacks. And to me, because he's capable of being a 3, 4 overall quarterback, I'm not saying that there aren't consistency concerns or now, there's issues there in-house. Is he happy? But he's got DK Metcalf. He's got Lockett. He's got Carson. This offense is still going to produce, and he's fully capable, in my opinion, of returning to the top 5 quarterback conversation anytime he wants. What do you think about him as the 8th drafted quarterback? And does he feel a little bit Aaron Rodgers to you from last year?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, he's a value there. He's going to be a quarterback one for sure this year. He is every year. You alluded to it a little bit, but my issue with Russ is the consistency. When you have someone like Russell Wilson, you pretty much have to play him. You play him every single week. You're not streaming that position. He's in your lineup. The problem is Russell Wilson has a lot of bad games. He has games where he actively hurts you in fantasy because they just decided to run the ball a lot that week. And now the team is they haven't just come out and said we want to run the ball more. They've made the changes. The offensive coordinator, after meeting with Pete Carroll, said, I'm going to quit because I disagree with you as a difference of philosophy. So I definitely think Russell Wilson is going to be, if you get him at 8, is he going to finish above 8 next year? I would say probably so. So you can call that a value, but in a redraft league, did he help you win a championship? Did he help you win more games than he helped you lose versus getting more value somewhere else and then streaming the position, playing good matchups every single week? So you actually have a higher bar of consistency. I probably won't be going after Russ unless he drops to the 10th round or so. Then you can be like, okay, I'm going to stream with Russ. I'm going to play the right matchups that I like, and not play the other ones.
Are there any quarterbacks you feel like I feel about Russell Wilson that are falling, like Burrow or Hurts? Anybody like that stands out to you that could be an absolute like win a league type land later on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll be where he is now when he's drafted. But Jalen Hurts, to me, is going to be a phenomenal fan. He's going to be a top 5 quarterback at the position. Right now I'm looking at him and I see him in the 8th round. I will grab Jalen Hurts in the 8th round all the time. I don't believe that's going to be realistic when everybody comes back, assuming that no Justin Fields drops to the Eagles and they take him. If Hurts is the guy, I think he's going to be much higher. If I'm talking about other wide receivers that I think are going to be disrespected or forgotten, I'm not sure where people will be drafting Dak, but I would very much prefer him over Herbert, who's, your number 2. You look at the receiving core and it's better. It's better than even if you add Devonta Smith or Kyle Pitts to the Chargers. I think the receiving core is better in Dallas and the defense is worse and the propensity to just air it out is there. So he's someone that if he drops at a draft, I'm going to be really excited to scoop up.
I mean, look, we saw him play at an elite level before he went down, and there's no denying those options. And you heard how high I am on Lamb, so it wouldn't shock me at all if he flirted in that 4 to 6 range, no question. And it wouldn't shock me if Herbert took another year to get to that 2 level. Maybe I'm a year early in redraft. We'll see where I rank him closer to August. But I still firmly believe he could drop those kinds of numbers. And when I say he's number 2 on my rankings are also a little bit different because my rankings need to be used with ADP because where I rank guys is not where I recommend people draft them. Sometimes people will see like Devonta Smith sky high on my dynasty rankings and then they come out of a draft and they're like, okay, I took him and everyone laughed at me. You told me to take him high. It's a little different from where I rank them. And that's a tough thing with what we do, right? Because you got to pick, are you going to guide someone based on ADP, but with some advice of, where the sleepers lie? Or are you going to produce a set of rankings that you predict to be the actual outcome and then advise someone to ensure they use ADP? So that's something I struggle with for all 19 years that I've been doing this. And I tend to stay with the where I predict them to actually fall. So me ranking him 2, I get away with drafting Herbert as late as I can, so let me clarify that. Kyle Pitts, you brought him up. Everyone's talking about him. Everybody's pretending they found him. It's getting a little annoying. Everybody loves him. So tout him up and tell me how high do you think he could be ranked in Dynasty after 1 calendar year?
I mean, I feel like I'm the anti-Pitts guy, and it's not because I think he's not great. He's the best receiving tight end I've ever seen. So I'm with everybody. He's unbelievably great. But there's a long track record of first-round tight ends not working in the NFL the way that we hoped. The hype didn't hit. They take a while to come to their own. That's widely known. The Travis Kelce's and George Kittles, they didn't do it in year one. And they also weren't first-round draft picks. Kyle Pitts is awesome. He's going to be great. But when I'm looking at rookie rankings, rookie startup drafts, I see people talking about Pitts at 2, or definitely top 5. I think we had a footcast today where we were talking about the 109. And, I was saying, well, if Pitts can fall there, and my 2 other co-hosts, and maybe rightly so, were saying that's impossible that Kyle Pitts could fall there. If I was drafting every single pick, it was 12 Jasons in that league, there's a good chance Kyle Pitts would be there at the 9th spot. I think that's about where I would be willing to draft him, because I just don't like holding and developing the tight ends. And maybe I'm insane. Like I said, he's unbelievably talented. And I think the destination is going to make a difference.
Yeah,
there are a couple of destinations at the top of the draft that he's been mocked to that are not good.
Yeah, I don't like
where
Detroit.
There's already another tight end there. If he goes to the Broncos and he's with Fant and no quarterback.
Detroit.
Are you really? Detroit, exactly. You got TJ Hawkinson and a bad quarterback. Philadelphia needs as many weapons as they can have, and they've had the 2 tight end system, but then it's Dallas Goedert. And, there are spots he goes where I think just saying, well, the talent is so great that you got to take him at the very tip top and he's going to be first ballot Hall of Famer. I think that's carried away. So
one of the last things I'll say, I'm playing in a league against Andy, actually, and it's a league with Darren Waller that he's in for charity. Give me a little tip to throw him off during the draft.
To throw him off during the draft, I'm going to be honest with you. You're not going to throw him off. He's going to smoke at all y'all in the league. He's going to represent our brand, and I mean that's just how it is. I got to represent the ballers over here. This is the one with Hugh Jackson.
Yeah, Hugh Jackson.
Oh yeah, he's taking Hugh Jackson.
T-Pain.
Is the reason. Yeah, I'm telling you this. Hugh Jackson's the reason Andy's in this league, because Hugh Jackson's been a figure on our show for as long as we've been around. A fun time. I think Andy has, I don't think it's on the set, but in the office, a signed Hugh Jackson autographed picture, because Andy was a Hugh Jackson believer while Mike and I were not. And then it's become a funny bit. But yeah, we're all rooting for Andy. As far as how to throw him off, maybe try to trade him Cardinals or guys that he says he really likes, and maybe he'll pay up a little bit too much for it.
Since we're close, so maybe I'll just have a bullhorn airing outside really loud, pointed in your direction, so that it distracts them. Because I think we're about 2 to 5 miles apart right now.
Oh, really? Wow.
And so hopefully COVID doesn't do anything this season to delay the or postpone games. I guess that would be my final question to you. Do you anticipate a modified season at all? Do you think we get through this COVID thing pretty?
I said this over and over and over and over last season when the pandemic was truly horrific and horrible and nobody knew what was going to happen. I said the NFL will start week 1 on time. It will finish the last week on time, and it will go off without a hitch. And it did. Now, a year later, with the vaccine rolling out, these are going to be packed stadiums, and nothing is going to get in the way of the NFL making its money. That's what it comes down to. That's why I said it last year. There's no worry at all that something COVID related is going to stop the NFL from happening on schedule.
Yeah, you guys are definitely pioneers in the video space. Even somebody that's been doing it as long as I have, I look up to you guys, and I think you've done such an amazing job paving the way for everybody that does video and podcasting. It doesn't have to be video, audio podcasting. You've really helped keep and get and then keep fantasy football relevant for a lot of people. So without you guys, it would be a much smaller industry. I have 100% no doubt about that. So appreciate it.
I appreciate the kind words. That's very nice.
Yep. All right. Jason Moore, thank you.
This is the Fantasy Football Show. with your host, Smitty.
Top 5 running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show.
Smitty!